our guest in the studio is the chairman, Nigeria Union of Teachers, right here in Akwa Ibom State, Etim Upon. Good morning to you, sir.
Thank you very much, and good morning.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, actually, yeah. We're meeting for the first time since the break of the New Year.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to be here, yeah.
Nice to have you.
Thank you.
Well, the theme of this year, recover and revitalize education for COVID-19. We know everything celebrated in 2021. As Naomi, Madam Speaker, had said earlier, it's tied to COVID-19. But let's understand the impact of COVID-19 better as it has to do with education.
Are we doing that in the context of Akwa Ibom State, or do we generalize?
Nigeria,
okay. Thank you very much. I think one thing we have to thank God for is that for all the ravaging that COVID-19, did the other time, we didn't have records of many, learners, falling victim to it. It's a very strong one by that the schools were able to manage the situation as it were, and came out with, the kind of result that we had where we didn't have victims among the teachers or the learners themselves at the primary and secondary school level, at least where one can talk about.
Well, let's get to what we are witnessing now. Some of the challenges. We do know that education has challenges.
Yeah, whole lot. Whole lot.
Well, please enlighten us some of the challenges as we face in Nigeria when it comes to education, and tying that to what we are witnessing with COVID-19 in the country.
Thank you very much. I think a major challenge that we are having in Nigeria when it comes to education is the class war. The class war currently ravaging the country. Class war in the sense that, when we were younger, you couldn't find, the public did not pay much premium on private schools. Everything was about the public education, and attention was given. Everything that needed to be done was done to ensure that education ran smoothly. And we were having the result, the required result. And that's somewhere when people began to see what I would refer to as private schoolism as the way out, to let them now come out from the Talakawas class to the other side, and they belong, to be seen to belong in the upper class. That is where we now have been having any person establishing a private school. Just any person for that matter. And unfortunately, the ministries of education across the country keep registering them regardless of standards and regardless of even the damages that these things are doing on the schools that they are supposed to manage. As I've always said, the government is the chief proprietor of private schools. The parents and guardians come second. And when you abandon your own to go now and promote the other side, there's something pathologically wrong.
Yeah, what was the justification given for the establishment of private schools?
I don't see any justification anybody will give at this point, apart from just wanting to show one that he now has, either migrated or graduated from the lower class to the upper class. What you find is that people came to see the establishment of schools as a very lucrative, business. Today, look around. All the churches have schools. And the church is supposed to be the one lending a voice to, like NUT, to draw government attention to how to make education, at least public education, work. But when all the churches are now school runners, school proprietors and proprietresses, who do you hope now to lend the voice or to speak on behalf of the common people?
Yeah, one common argument is that the standard of education in public schools were falling uncontrollably, and there was need to set up private schools.
Now let us ask, who caused it? I have been around for a very long time in this system. Even before coming in to teach, I was a student in the Faculty of Education, so I was following very closely development. I recall, and I can vividly recall, that it was government that started, ensuring that public education standards fell as it were. For starters, let us look at infrastructure. Every parent who struggles to have money has one thing at the back of his or her mind. Let me send my child to a school where what? If they ask me, where is your child? I say, that is where he or she belongs. And you look at the public schools, the buildings were in tatters, in serious state of dilapidation, and nobody was caring about them. And now the next one is provision of learning aids. You go to a laboratory in a public school, all you can find are ancient burette and the pipette and the other things. You cannot see anything that somebody can say, yes, my child is learning something new. If you are a father, if you are a mother, there's a way you look at that situation and you start thinking, differently from how you did before you went to that place. And now come to say, look at the standards now that they were talking about. Somebody owing a teacher for 8 months. As we speak, you know that in Abia State it is 12 months to senior secondary school teachers, 11 months to junior secondary school teachers, 3 months to primary school teachers. Can you imagine? Now, when you owe somebody, and let me also say that I came into, do I say enjoy or suffer from the same thing? I recall that I came into service after 1 or 2, 3 months. I was not paid for 8 months. And I was a young person. Supposing I had opportunity, wouldn't I have left? And when a system begins to carefully and intentionally drain out its best brains, what do you expect of such a system? Everybody was migrating. If you ask me, I attended interview close to 13 other places, wanting to leave, including even radio stations, wanting to leave. So people were running away from teaching. And the government policies were equally not helping, other policies were not helping matters. What quality of persons were you recruiting into education? What were the actual policies that created such a situation where you needed to recruit every Tom, Dick and Harry into the system? When there were young ones attending schools, and public schools for that matter, at least up to this generation the generations that are in charge of government across the country today in Nigeria are product of public schools. So was it like this when you were there? If you were there like this, would your father have allowed you to stay there? Wouldn't your father have thought of an alternative place to go and keep you? But he had enough confidence that the teachers were delivering. My teacher will come into the class in the morning. I will sketch a map of Nigeria immediately. And you came now to bring people who will not even know the location of Nigeria or the map of Africa as teachers. What were you expecting? Simply because your interest was not there. You were struggling to becoming another member of the upper class. And so whatever was happening there did not interest you. And you came to corporal punishment and, of course, discipline. When we say corporal punishment, there's a way it sounds. But when we say discipline, you see the entire picture of what it was. I recall when late Professor Babatunde Fashola was an education minister. Suddenly he banned corporal punishment in schools. You never know why. It's just like they banned history, the teaching and learning of history recently. Is that a country? America has gone to the moon, gone to Mars, gone to Pluto, gone to Jupiter. By now, we never know where they want to go to again. But they are still learning history in their schools. But in Nigeria, they said, no, don't learn again. You see, the policy fraud, the policy somersault, and all those things won't allow the system to move as it used to move. And so, people began to see the public education sector as a dumping ground. 2, anybody who doesn't have a job, the kind of job he or she will want to go there. And of course, that psychologically that person does not belong. He will go there fuming with God and himself why he should find himself in this kind of situation. Become a teacher became a burden. The salaries were not coming, other entitlements were not coming, the materials to work with were not there. And there was a social rundown of the teacher. You go to a church, there's a little...
How do you mean, social rundown?
Social rundown where everybody is citing outside the church as the last, the drake of society. You go even into a church where you expect people to have a lot of love. Somebody will say, sit down here. When they talked about money, and the teacher stood up, I want to come and sit down. How much are you going to donate? How much are you going to donate? You see?
Our guest